welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. Thank you for being with us. We are your source for market intel, forecasts, and strategies. Well, this show is brought to you by Lumit.com. Check it out if you need some financing, especially for multifamily, senior, student. These guys do a great job. Tell them Michael Bull sent you from America's Commercial Real Estate Show. You can find their contact information at Lumit.com. Well, today we're going to talk about retail. Retail has been an incredible sector. It's like, we heard there was the death of retail when the internet was strong and then COVID was strong and the retail's going out, kind of like we heard in the Great Recession that homes and housings were going to be kaput forever. And of course, now we're hearing office is done forever, but yeah, things do change, right? Retail has been doing well, but all commercial real estate sectors are having some challenges from time to time, right? We're having the insurance costs, we're having crime issues in some of the downtown areas. Of course, we have the higher interest rates are hurting both tenants and ownership groups. So what's going on? Well, let's get the scoop. Please welcome my guest. It's Tom McGee. He is CEO of ICSC, International Conference of Shopping Centers, and he's joining us on video. Tom, good to see you.
Hi, Michael. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you. And let's get a start. I know everyone around the country knows about ICSC, but tell us about how many members, how long you guys been around, and who are the members of ICSC?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. ICSC has over 50,000 members. We represent everyone that participates in the marketplace industry. So that's owners, developers, retailers and tenants, service providers, financial institutions, attorneys, accountants, etc. If you participate in the marketplace industry where people shop, work, dine, and play, you're likely a member of ICSC. ICSC has been around for almost 70 years now. We're well known as really the preeminent organization kind of serving the marketplaces industry, but we really bring people together. Our number one value proposition is bringing people together to network to support their business. We're well known for our large conferences, ICSC Las Vegas, ICSC New York, ICSC Southeast that will be coming soon in your region, and a whole host of others throughout the country, as well as a large number of local events. And so as well as research and other tools for the industry and public advocacy. So we've been around a long time. We have a very large, diverse membership, and looking forward to talking to you about the industry.
Yeah, I tell you, if most listeners are going to be very familiar with ICSC, but in case you're not, or you're helping some folks understand about ICSC, really makes retail real estate one of the more efficient sectors, in my view. In a brokerage shop that we do all sorts of properties in the Southeast, and retail just can become very efficient. And the ICSC Vegas convention is absolutely incredible. I remember the first year I went, I don't know, I expected people, giving out trinkets at booths and saying hello, but everywhere I looked, it was like people signing leases, signing contracts, just hey, we're going to go here, we're going to go here. It was like a lot of transactions were going on.
Yeah, it's a working show. So, a lot of trade shows have the reputation of what you just said, which is people, walk by booths and they get kind of trinkets and so forth, where ICSC Vegas is really about people. Every 30 minutes, people get together and they talk about what's going on in their business, what are the growth opportunities, what are the leasing opportunities, et cetera. And they get work done. And so whether they sign a lease or they advance a conversation, that takes place in Las Vegas and all of our events. And, retail is unique, I think, in all the forms of commercial real estate, because while relationships are important in business in general, they're particularly important in retail real estate. The curation of the mix of who's in a property is so important, and really thinking through how you balance your property relative to the needs of that property, the demographics of the community they operate in, and so forth. So relationships are key, which plays to kind of ICSC's strength and service offerings.
Yeah, well, good point. And as you mentioned, you have your Southeast Conference coming in Atlanta, October 17th and 18th. So if you have anything to do with retail real estate, you really want to be involved with ICSC, and that's coming from me as a broker with no dog in the hunt here, just giving advice here on the show. And let's talk about the performance of retail, because I think it depends on where you are in the country, and maybe if you're kind of urban or suburban, you can kind of look at retail, or if you're looking at maybe some of the older malls, or you're looking at some of the new mixed-use, vibrant developments. In one hand, it can look like things are going extremely well, a lot of demand, and then in some spots you have some challenges. What do you see overall for performance in retail today?
Yeah, no, I think you've highlighted it well. First of all, suburban retail is basically on fire right now. I mean, particularly the open air space. The demand for good location and open air retail is at its strongest in history, certainly in my tenure. The industry was at the epicenter of the pandemic. There's no doubt about that. But so many things that were accelerated during the course of the pandemic. And then we learned that how we refamiliarized ourselves with how important it is for people to socialize and how much they value, going to their local shopping center and marketplace. And so open air retail and suburban retail in general is super strong. There's been really almost no new supply that's been built over the course of the last 15 years. Yes, in some markets there's been supply built, but in other markets there's been supply taken off. And so when you look at it nationally, where retail sales over the course of the last 15 years since the great financial crisis have increased by about 85% over that period of time.
Wow.
U.S. GDP's increased by almost 30%. U.S. population by almost 10%. Retail real estate really has almost not grown at all. Net square footage over that period of time. So you have really no new net supply that's come on, and at the same time, you've had, just by virtue of growth, you have demand increases, but then you also have retail space being used for alternative purposes. And that's one of those things that was really accelerated during the pandemic. We're all familiar with the term omni-channel retail. But what really took place in the pandemic was the use of retail space for multiple purposes, click and collect, curbside pickup, and now really using that retail space as almost a mini fulfillment center as well as a traditional shopping location. So that's created a lot of demand for physical retail space, particularly in the suburbs, because people are spending a lot more time in the suburbs now because they're working there, because they're not commuting as often into the city centers. That is the part of retail that's more challenged, and the part that often gets shown in the media because of the iconic nature of America's, city downtowns. Urban retail is more challenged because office is more challenged, and office traffic is what that urban retail is dependent upon. So there's really a tale of two cities, so to speak. But remember, urban retail is really a small percentage of total retail square footage in the United States. But that is more challenged because office is more challenged.
Yeah, and I guess one of those challenges for urban retail in some markets is crime, right?
Yeah, crime is a challenge for retail in multiple dimensions. Obviously, if you don't have the kind of traffic and occupancy in downtowns, that has led to the increase in crime. But a broad issue that's impacting the industry is really organized retail crime, which is getting a lot of attention in major cities, but quite frankly, it's spreading out into the suburbs as well. And this is different than just traditional shoplifting. This is, as the name would suggest, organized groups that go in and commit crime for the purposes of not using the goods that they're stealing, but actually turning around and selling them, typically online in an online marketplace, but in other forms as well. And there's been a number of recent actions at both the federal and state level and city level around organized retail crime. Most recently, there was a new bill passed in a bipartisan nature called the Inform Act that requires online sellers to inform customers as to where the source of those goods were. So if you're seeing a branded item on there, you should in fact see that item came from the store or the brand upon which it represents, as opposed to some other source. That was just recently passed and just became implemented. And so we'll start to see some additional restrictions around that. There's some other bills that are being proposed at the federal level, and you're seeing things at at various state and municipal levels to mirror what's happening at the federal level, as well as some additional efforts around crime in general, including here in New York City, where I'm at, where Mayor Adams has made some recent changes and announcements around dealing with retail crime. So it's a multi-dimensional effort. There's a lot of the things that you see in the news that are, get a lot of attention, and which are very fortunate and scary, that are happening in city centers. But the issue of organized retail crime, because is broader. It's a very sophisticated network of organized crime that is, going impacting retail across the country and selling goods on the internet and other means, and that needs to stop through federal legislation and increase crime enforcement.
Well, it's excellent to hear that something's being done to try to curtail that problem. Because you just hate to see some of these retailers just having to shut down, and it hurts the communities that they're in when they shut down, right?
It does. I mean, retail really is, you know, um, the lifeblood. Brings life to communities, right? If you think about a marketplace, it's really become, in so many ways, in a modern America, kind of the downtown or the community center where people gather. Whether it's at the shopping, whether it's at a local shopping center, whether it's at a coffee shop, whether it's at the grocery store, whether it's at a larger retail center, whether it's just eating out in that marketplace. And when if you see as a result of crime some hollowed out space, that's going to deteriorate the community. Of course, it also impacts the finances of those communities as well. Retail tends to be the largest source of obviously sales tax revenue, often property tax revenue in that community. And so it's super important, to communities across the U.S. and particularly, urban centers.
Yeah. Well, we have a division of our firm that sells shopping centers and strip centers, and they move really, really well. There seems to be a lot of demand for these properties, and I guess part of that is, obviously the performance now, but also, what's expected for the future. You mentioned that in most markets, there's really not enough supply and a lot of demand. What do you foresee for the future performance of retail?
Yeah, I think from a performance of a shopping center or marketplace, it's going to continue to be quite strong because of the lack of supply with and an increase in demand for space, and the consumer, quite frankly, continues to be resilient. We've seen that throughout, throughout the pandemic and the post-pandemic world. I think the capital market activity around commercial real estate in general could be a little bit more inconsistent because of the rise of interest rates. Quite frankly, we're really at a point where we're kind of at a historical cost of capital if you look back over a 20, 30-year time horizon. But the dramatic acceleration in rates over a short period of time has really impacted transaction activity in all commercial real estate sectors, retail not being immune to that. So I think the performance of the property is going to continue to be quite strong because the underlying fundamentals are there. But capital market transaction type of activity could be very inconsistent depending upon what happens with interest rates and how quickly the market can adjust to that.
Yeah, good point. And I think most retail properties, however, they're performing well. So hopefully they can handle, when a borrower has a 3.5% rate and then they have to refinance it at 7.5%, maybe. That is quite a jump, isn't it?
No, it is. I mean, obviously, the underlying economics were underwritten at a certain assumption of the cost of money, and that
Right.
assumption has changed. So, I think the contrast to, office, which tends to have very long-term leases, on one end of the spectrum, and of course, you have something like hospitality on the other end of the spectrum, which has, by definition, the shortest term leases because you just have people check in and out on a daily or couple day basis. Retail's somewhat in the middle in regards to lease duration and so forth. So it gives you some flexibility in regards to changing, the cost of rent. but that's inflationary too. So I think all those things in the mix have to be balanced. But yeah, I mean, if you're, it's a challenging environment if you need to raise, if you need to refinance right now. It's a much more challenging environment than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah. I love retail real estate too because one of the things it's usually good real estate, if you will. I mean, it's good property, right? It's possibly main and main and has visibility and has good access and can be used for multiple things. As we were talking before the show, a lot of these properties are building hotels and multifamily on them and making them more vibrant, mixed use rather than just malls. And we're talking with Tom McGee. Tom is CEO of ICSC. And Tom, I'd like to get some strategies, some ideas from you for maybe a landlord in the current market, and then also for tenants. So, first of all, for the landlords out there, what kind of tips or strategies would you give them right now to think about?
I think what's old is new in some respects, right? So, the first um, rule of real estate is obviously always location, right? And so if you have a property, you really need to understand, where you're located and what are the demographics and needs of that community. And so I think, curating the mix, merchandising your property to fit the community is job number one. Second, it's a competitive marketplace, and so you're, investing in that property to ensure that it has the look and feel and modern amenities that are necessary. Whether that's an open air center or a mall is super important. And third, having the right type of relationships with your tenant is important. And supporting, these broader trends that are happening around curbside pickup and click and collect and so forth. And if you think about those things, whether you're a regional mall or a Target or Walmart or Costco anchored center or a grocery anchored neighborhood center, they all have implications for things like just curbside pickup and click and collect have implications in regards to traffic flow. And the management of how people navigate the parking structure and so forth. And while those may seem small, they're actually quite big because that you want to reduce friction in people's shopping experience, or they're not going to come. So I think that's super important. On the retailer side, on the tenant side, look, I think there's one cardinal rule in retail, which is merchandising is super important, and then customer service is super important. So they're interrelated. So that's why I said what's old is new. I mean, these rules of what makes a successful retailer and a successful center haven't really changed. Now, what you do to implement against those rules might change. So I think merchandising is super important. I think customer service is important, and I think investing, in your store network is super important. So because people are, it is competitive, and you have to entice people to come to the store versus shopping online. And so investing in your store, making sure that it's clean, represent your brand in an effective way, that your workers represent your brand, employees and teammates represent your brand in the right way, are properly trained is super important, because those are things that people can't get online. They can ask somebody a real question and get a real answer in a store, and an informed answer. So training, approachability, service are super important. And I would say one other thing, back to these trends of click and collect and curbside pickup, and really the support of online, the use of physical retail as a mini fulfillment center. The way your store it goes back to merchandising. How your store is laid out can't be the same as how it was laid out 10 years ago. If you're going to support online sales, there needs to be an efficient way for customers to come into the store, pick up that order, and leave in an efficient manner, or they're going to ask for that to be shipped to their house. And it is incredibly important for retailers. I mean, we've grown up with this idea that free shipping is somehow a constitutional right, but it really isn't. Somebody pays for that shipping, and typically it's the retailer. And so If you can entice your customer, support your customer to come to the store to pick up an item that they ordered online, not only do you have an opportunity to interact with your customer, create a great brand impression with them, but you have saved the shipping costs. And so your margin, it's a much more profitable sale for you. And of course, then you also have the pull-through opportunity of potentially somebody buying something else when they're in the store. And so there's a lot to that I think is super important for, for both property owners and tenants to think about.
Yeah, those are some great points, and I love the one about your staff. And I know it's a difficult time to get employees that or do a good job, and I think it's real important that the customers are welcomed and feel taken care of by knowledgeable staff. I love that one, and then for the landlord side, I like all the great ideas there, and I'm sure this is one that you'd recommend as well is EV charging, electric vehicle
Absolutely.
charging. There's more and more demand for that, and if they've got to sit there for 20, 30 minutes or an hour to charge their vehicle, why not do it in these retail centers, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it has the double benefit of one, oftentimes utilizing underutilized space, which is a parking lot or parking a garage, and then secondly, it's a way to encourage people to go shopping, so you get the double benefit of it. So absolutely, very good point, Michael.
Well, great. Well, what would you leave our audience with, Tom, to think about related to retail?
Look, I think this is a dynamic industry. Retail has always been dynamic. There is a lot of changes that are happening in the economy and the marketplace. But retail, we were at the epicenter, the absolute epicenter of the pandemic, when people could not go out shopping for the most part. And yet this industry has emerged in a stronger position. And who would have thought that, in the midst of the summer of 2020, when we were all super worried about, the future of this industry and people congregating together again. And here we are now with demand being at its super high level and supply being, limited. So you have this demand supply mismatch. And I'm very bullish on the industry long term. I do recognize there's some challenges, given inflation, which we haven't really talked about, and given, interest rates. But from a long-term perspective, particularly because of that, supply constraint, I'm very bullish on retail real estate.
Great. Well, good information, Tom. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us around the country. I'd also add, as I said earlier, I do recommend being a member of ICSC if you have anything to do with retail. And they've been developing some technology, too. They have a system called Marketplace IQ, and it's free for members. You'll love this technology. You'll want to check it out. Hey, if you will be in Atlanta October 17th and 18th, reach out and say hello. My email is michael@bullrealty.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the show. And until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh. And join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show. This Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty. For commercial brokerage sales and leasing in the Southeast U.S., contact our show host by email at michael@bullrealty.com. By Commercial Agent Success Strategies, 21 incredible one-hour agent training videos. Learn more at commercialagentsuccess.com. By C5 CCIM Summit, 3 days of commercial real estate networking, learning, and investing. Learn more and register at c5summit.realestate. And by Lument. For senior housing, healthcare, and multifamily financing, visit lument.com. For more podcasts and videos, subscribe and visit creshow.com.